My name is Carrie Smith, and I did my project 2 over Piaget's cognitive development theory, and I chose it out of chapter 2, which is cognitive language and literacy development. Piaget's cognitive development is a theory that states that a child's understanding develops in stages, and there are 4 stages during this life. The first is sensory motor, and the student learns about their self. Object permanence, which means they learn that an object never changes, even if it's not present. Students learn about their self and about how their actions affect them and other people. The next stage is pre-operational, and that's from the ages of 2 to 7. The students learn how to use language. They're very egocentric, which is self-centered. They classify objects by one feature, which means if it's a red block, they're going to group it with a red block. If it's a blue block, they're going to group it with a blue block. Formal operational is from 11 and up. The student thinks logically, and they learn to think about abstract hypotheses, and they become concerned about their future. Piaget's theory at work, he suggested 3 steps when implementing it in the classroom based on their development. The first one is use props and visual aids. The second is it makes instruction short and to the point. Third, do not expect the student to see the world in your view or in any other person's view. Be sensitive to what the student has discovered and their ideas. Provide lots of hands-on work and practice before you give them the big project or the big assignment. Provide lots of background information to provide a foundation for an assignment. He says that you shouldn't just drop an assignment on them without giving them information on how to complete the assignment or how you want them to come up with an assignment. You need to give them background information on what you need, what you want, and what you expect from them. This is my lesson plan, and I'm certified in history, so I chose this is my lesson plan. I want my students to compare and contrast the 3 branches of government at the state and national levels of government. The 3 levels are executive, legislative, and judicial. My objectives for this lesson is that students will be able to identify and understand the 3 branches of government and their differences, and then the students will be able to compare and contrast the 3 branches of government. I chose the explicit teaching model when teaching my lesson, and I will explain what the students are to research and discover about the 3 branches of government. I will show them how to do this and how to fill out the worksheet, and that way they can understand what I'm wanting from them. The second step is guided practice. I'll help them. We'll fill out a worksheet together. I'll help them help me, and we'll kind of work it out together. And then in the last thing, I'll give them a different worksheet, different information for the students to fill out based on their knowledge of the assignment. And then I'm going to bring us back to a whole group discussion and make sure that every student understood, and if they didn't, let them ask me questions. Let me see if maybe I need to change something when I'm modeling to them, and kind of let them shape me on what I'm not doing right for them. The last stage is assessment, and I will evaluate my students by allowing them to write a paper on the 3 branches of government. I want my students to write me a paper that says, okay, this is what the 3 branches of governments are, and this is how they're different. This is what they contain. Piaget versus Vygotsky. The development starts at birth. For Piaget, the development is influenced by the brain and stages of growth. The cognitive development over 4 stages focuses on age groups from birth to adulthood. Vygotsky, he says that cultural influences development. To a certain extent, I agree, because you don't know where a child comes from and what they're going through when they're being brought up into their development. Vygotsky says that social factors determine cognitive development. He focuses on the parts of language in development, so the student learns what language they're speaking, which is culture based on how they act. He focuses on attention, sensory, perception, and memory, where Piaget focuses on several. My plan of action is to use win-win discipline. I have this textbook from a previous class, and I really liked how Cadian provided this. Not only is there a way to use ABCD disruptions, the 7 positions, the 3 pillars, I want my students to know that I'm on their side and I will help them in any way. So I chose the 3 pillars, and I'll let my students know that we're on the same side. I'll collaborate with them, and then I'll make sure that they succeed. I feel that a student needs to know that you care, and the best way to do that is by being on their side, helping them in any way you can to a certain extent, and making sure that they know that they can do anything they want in life based on, even if they come out of poverty, bad home, anything like that. Piaget's theories has pros and cons to them. In our book, it talks about how Piaget's theories are criticized, I guess you would say. His theories, people say, are not as good as Vygotsky's, because Vygotsky focuses on certain other developments. Piaget doesn't focus on social or cultural. There's not any particular stage that you see where how a child grows up affects how they develop. The pros to this are that young children can succeed by having Piaget's thing. They don't change because they've always started out at one point. His theory is taught based on development or appropriate levels. So you know, if you have a child in the 4th grade that comes in, what age group they're in, you know where they should be based on Piaget's theory. So that allows us as a teacher to know the knowledge of where the students are and how to introduce things, and where to introduce things to see if they understand or if they don't understand. The cons, I would say, is that students that don't have a good home and don't have that support from their parents may be a little developmentally delayed. So we should help that child become to that development. I mean, we can't just sit here and say, okay, well, this child is 7 years old. He's going to fit into these categories, because we really can't. We have to look and see where he comes from, what his knowledge criteria is. And then Piaget overestimates and underestimates what some children are capable of. Yes, you have those students that can blow you out of the water and go above and beyond, but then you also have those students who may not have that ability to succeed without some extra help from the teacher or the understanding of what's expected of them. This is my picture that I created, and I used it in just this 4 stages so that I could better understand. In the sensory motor, is infancy, and you see in the picture of the baby looking at herself because she discovered who she was before, because she didn't know that she was a person. The pre-operational stage is a young girl who is probably 5, 6, and that's what stage she would fit in. And they learn to group objects by one feature. The next one is a young man between the ages of 7 and 11, and he's learned to group blocks based on whatever's around. And then the last stage is the formal stage, which is from 11 years old and up, and she's focused on getting ready for college or whatever. And these are stages in Piaget's development. And then the very bottom picture, it helps provide kind of some background information on what's learned in that theory. I chose an abstract poem. It's all cognitive development going down, and it says concrete operational goals, numbers, infancy talks, Identify self, voice, and egocentric for cognitive. Now, development is discipline, evidence, value, entities, logic, older ages, pre-operational, motor, empathetic, notices patterns, and thinks. My bibliography, there's 7 right here, and all of these are internet sources or videos. Each one of them provides information on Vygotsky and Piaget, and it discusses each one, and some of them kind of go together, and it gives you the pros and cons, or gives you the ideas. And then there's a video that I have on here about Piaget's theory, and it kind of explains it a little bit better than our text, but it's very in-depth and kind of down to earth, where you can understand not the large terminology for someone who really doesn't understand all the big words that he uses in his text. The last 3 are books that I chose that I had here, except one, and it's our textbook. The first one is The Educator's Field Guide, which I used it when creating my lesson plan so that I could better understand classroom management, how to write a lesson plan, all that stuff. The next one is our textbook, which is Educational Psychology. I used it when I was trying to work out the kinks between my text and my internet sources and my videos that I got, so that I could better understand from all 3 aspects of the information I received. The last one is Kagan's Win-Win Discipline, and this is a book that teaches you how to deal with discipline and uses many different ideas: ABCD disruption, the 7 positions, the 3 pillars, all this stuff that comes together to help manage your classroom when dealing with behavior that may not fit our classroom.